Many thanks for inviting me here, and it's an honor for me to be here. Unfortunately, I will not talk about gaming, but we need gaming a lot, and serious gaming in particular in this technology. So what I would present here is actually hopefully initiating some discussions, some collaborations, and the need is there. I try to show it a little bit more in details. Everything I present, most of them are done by these young guys. This was a static picture of about 2 years ago of my chair. But if I don't mention all of them by name, a lot of them is their work, and on our website you can find their publications. I start with about 6-7 years ago when we took a technology of head-mounted display from Siemens Corporate Research, where I was in the 90s together with Frank Sauber and Ali Kamen, and we brought it to Germany to the Society of Orthopedic and Trauma Surgeons in Berlin. Jörg Traub, who is sitting there, had an accident in the past and had a CT of his leg done at that time. And with this head-mounted display with cameras, the doctors, the surgeons in that conference could go around his leg and see the volume rendering of the CT on top of his leg in real time. They were very excited. Jörg could rigidly move his leg and everything was still valid. They could also visualize slices of CT data that was taken a few years back then on top of Jörg's leg. And this created a lot of excitement. In that conference in Berlin, about 200 surgeons came and played around with the system during 5 days. And many of them were excited. They didn't know actually how they are going to use it, but this created a lot of excitement for them. And in fact, this comes from a century of medical image development. After, in the end of the last century, we had so much data in MR, CT, PET, ultrasound, X-ray, optical imaging, that actual use of it within surgery, from my point of view, is still minimal. It's used a lot in diagnostic, in planning, but once we get into the surgery, the amount of such data used is still quite reduced. So after creating this excitement, we went with the surgeons back into the hospital labs where most of my PhD students are active. And we started to bring this technology into their daily training. I mean, before that, we started our first try to combine augmented reality with simulators. There was an actual simulator developed by Dr. Burkhardt and Professor Riner at our hospital, Rechter Isar. And what you see here again goes back to 2004, 2005, where we added the augmented reality into this simulator. Now, what was interesting, not only was that they could see the continuation of forceps and they could see through the phantom, but something very interesting came to it, thanks to Tobias Zilhorst and Tobias Blum, was that we could actually track the forceps while the expert was explaining how to use it. And then practically, when we could replay that motion, that actions of the main expert, and show it to the trainees, and the trainees could then continue in his absence. In addition, they could also go and try it themselves. And then the system was trying to compare their action with the action done by surgeons, so they could actually more or less even numerically, if possible, evaluate themselves to see how well they did that. And at that time, again, Tobias Blum and Tobias Zilhorst together, they used a dynamic time warping mathematics coming from the speech community mostly to correctly synchronize the 3D actions of the trainee and the expert surgeon. And in that, this was a video for a conference in augmented reality in 2005 in Vienna, where they got the best paper award there. They could actually now synchronize the two, and then the idea was if I do such synchronized actions of different surgeons, I could also, if I could do that interventionally, I could also provide some feedback directly to them. Now, I think a lot of things that I talked in this presentation could be oriented towards game. Is not, unfortunately. It's done still by us and the hospital partners, mostly a kind of training systems, but still not a training system which would allow them to attract them by using the concepts of gaming and creation of this imagination. Now, this was 2004, 2005, but my main ambition was to get into the operating room. And the operating room, this is an operating room in one of our hospitals in center of Munich, in a university hospital. And it's really amazing how to bring augmented reality or novel technology in such an environment. Something I want you to notice is that, other than a little bit of training outside this room, how to handle a laparoscopic device, 90% of teaching and training, at least in Germany, is done during this kinds of very busy surgeries. So we started to bring this head-mounted display into their cadaver training studies, and they got really excited, but they didn't know how to actually use it within. And then we started to see what are the problems with these kinds of augmentation for training, augmentation of AR and slices into the operating room. The problem within an operating room is, in an operating room, you're really concentrating on patient, and everything is following a very tense workflow. So the first thing we learned in that is that, in this environment, if you want to bring a new technology, it's quite challenging. And maybe later we'll talk also about how to train and prepare the doctors for that. Some of the challenges are because this is a very high-intensity performance. They're focusing on the patient. They have to make decision, action, and they have to use their knowledge. And if we want to augment them, we have to augment them within this circle, within this workflow. So what is happening is that more and more, using a lot of preoperative data, CT, MR, PET, etc., we have a very nice patient virtual physiological model, also thanks to a lot of support of Europe, and many companies are working on it. Intraoperatively, we get updated by some dynamic intraoperative imaging, whether it's ultrasound or optics or X-ray. And now there is a diagnostic or treatment process model that uses those data and goes, if we want to develop our user interface and provide them with information, it has to, use that process model to combine correctly the preoperative and intraoperative virtual data. And of course, we will at the end update the virtual model. Now, that means that if a new company, such as Philips, Siemens, GE, Brainlab, Medtronic, all of them, if they want to design a novel technology, a novel sensing and imaging solution and bring it to the operating room, they have to take this treatment models, the healthcare financial, the patient data, and validation and certification into account. But something which is a very good news for the people who are sitting in front of me is that until a few years ago, they could actually, in diagnostic, their main market was diagnostic market. And in diagnostic market, the people were not in this high-intensity performance situation. They could sit behind a computer in radiology department or nuclear medicine, and comfortably, they would have a few minutes at least to discuss patient images. Now, inside the operating room, you don't have that luxury. So what happens is that one component is now playing a huge role in getting products into use, and those are surgical training and interventional imaging and interventional use of devices. I can tell you about my own frustration. When I joined Siemens Corporate Research in '94, I was a part of a big group of about 20 people in Princeton, London, Ontario in Canada, Erlangen, and Forchheim in Germany. Altogether, between '94 and '98, we developed this new technology of 3D angiography, when interventionally we could reconstruct the blood vessels of anatomy in real time in 3D. At the same time, GE and Philips also came with similar solutions. We were absolutely all excited about it. Many hospitals purchased that, and 10 years later, when I was now at the university collaborating with the radiology department, I was in one of this room and I asked one of the doctors, why don't you use the 3D? And he told me, we don't have it on this system. I looked at the system. I was 10 years with Siemens before joining university. I looked at the system and I told them, you have it. He says, no, we don't have it. I say, I know you have it. Should we call your department head? We called the department head, and they actually had paid 150,000 euro upgrade to have the 3D. So I told them, why don't you use it? In fact, nobody knew how to use it, because 1 or 2 persons were trained on that system. Those guys left the hospital, and nobody was actually knowing how to run those options. So it's really frustrating, such a work that we did and such a great opportunity to use it for the care of the patient is used in some hospitals for research, and they do publications, but it's not spread around because of the lack of good tools for training and teaching. And now companies are realizing that, because before, the time to market was mostly defined by certification, and also reimbursements of insurances. So they were fighting for those things because they wanted to take the advantage of 6 months that they had over the competition. Now, in surgery rooms or interventionals, when they bring the new product, it will take years for the training, and therefore, this would not allow them to take advantage of the advances they have over competition. So now many companies, unfortunately for you, are thinking to prepare the training and teaching tools before they bring the solution to the market. And that means that they have to do a lot of serious gaming if they want to really bring it into the solution. 2 of the things that when I was in Truth was discussed, one was Freehand SPECT and one was CAM-C and Camera-augmented C-arm. I will talk briefly about these 2 solutions that we brought into the operating room. The first one, again, followed this concept that in the last century, we were mostly looking at 2 million euro CT device, huge devices, doing whole body or partial, a big part of the body imaging, or MR, etc. And we were not, our computational power and technology was not at the level that we will be brave enough to bring it into the operating room. So what we had, for example, in case of one of the functional imaging which was used was a SPECT. So SPECT was that device you see in the right-hand side. This is one of them. And the patient was getting reconstructed. The SPECT was, the patient was injected with radioactivity, and you were reconstructing the hot spot. Now, if you go into an operating room, such a solution cannot apply. The size, price, time, none of them is fitting the workflow of the surgery. So one of the things that we started to do is to start doing reconstructions and visualization of exactly what is needed inside the operating room. So I don't need that huge device. I take a very simple light gamma probe, which now is detecting, instead of 8 billion events, is detecting only about 40,000 events, but it goes directly on the area of interest and does a SPECT reconstruction in the operating room in less than 5 minutes. Currently, it's 2 minutes. Now the advantage is I have it on the patient inside the operating room. So I want to take advantage of it. And we have to, again, do a correct visualization and go all the way. I show you just when we started with this project, we were in the lab, as usual, in 2007, in the nuclear medicine department, combining a bunch of technology and with tracking and, a camera on the side. We were using an endoscope. And we were trying to do the very first reconstructions that we were obtaining. Of course, coming from augmented reality, we were already using some primitive augmented reality to visualize the path of acquisition. And then finally, we were showing the reconstructions of what was needed inside, hopefully, operating rooms there. But it takes us very short amount of time, fortunately, to go from that to creation of a company called Surgical, which was creating this device and bring it to the market, which with a product called Eclipse SPECT, which actually, in Netherlands also is in some hospitals. So the components, and then what we added to the regular navigation was this little camera, which allows us to do augmentation in real time. Now we brought everything into the operating room, and we started to work and bring this technology directly into the operating room. Of course, what we had now was a lot of information into the operating room, and such a thing, to use it without training, good luck if you have 2 minutes only inside the operating room to use it. This is actually the first patient on whom this system was used. The video is accelerated. At that time, it took 6 minutes to do the acquisition inside the operating room. And the kind of results that you will get is that pre-incision, you will have the incision site, and in this case, the sentinel lymph nodes within the operating room, and you can see it superimposed to the patient directly, or in real augmented reality or virtual reality. And here, after the excision, you can see that the inside, only the injection site is still active. The rest is taken care of. This is just showing you the operation inside the operating room and the augmented reality use of the hot spots, or this is again the injection site and then the nodules inside the operating room. They can also, they have to also do a correct acquisition, and there are some virtual reality help for them to tell them whether this, because there is no more motoric acquisition systematic. This is really done by the surgeon within the operating room or the staff, and they need to have guidance and expertise. And then they can use either augmented reality, or once they do the reconstruction, they also can go to the virtual reality mode. And then in that, this allows them to do, to define the orientation and distances in that virtual world, and then plan for their surgery within the operating room. Now, that became a very, very incredible success in the sense that now is certified in US, in Europe, and FDA approved in US. Over 10 countries have distributors over there, and the system has been already used for over thousands or 2,000 patients. Now, to our application, what is interesting is that we are recording everything. And we looked how often the surgeons are using virtual reality versus augmented reality versus virtual reality. And even though it was really depending on which phase of the surgery they were doing this, it was varying over the surgeons. Some surgeons that were not using it, they were using the VR very little. Some who were doing it a lot. And this, for me, already such a thing shows that there is a need for training. You don't want to have so much variability in the usage of your system. So if there was a systematic training, a correct training, then we would have a pattern which would be more smooth and would come from training, not from the way the surgeon is reacting. Now, in the spirit of what many of you are doing, we started to create a simulator where the doctor can come. We have a simulated source of radiation inside this phantom. This is simulated, so they are not getting, but the reconstruction is a function of their acquisition. So basically, they can, and the data inside can be simulated from different real patients. So in fact, they can come and train themselves to see how they would do the acquisition and the process based on different disease and different patients, and then we could provide them with feedback because we are recording everything in real time. A second system that again was mentioned was camera-augmented mobile C-arm. This is an invention which took longer to come into the market because I did it when I was at Siemens, and big companies are slower than smaller companies. So it's becoming the first product, I think, hopefully comes in October 2011 now. So, but the idea we started was in 1999, is that a camera is attached to the X-ray source, and double mirrors allowed a real alignment of X-ray and optic at all time. This goes into the housing of the X-ray, and that means that from now on, if such a system is available, we are using optics and X-ray at the same time. One of the applications is the positioning of the patient. So the crew would position the patient exactly where it should be, and then they see the X-ray directly on top of that. There are several applications. You can also, so they can define the target localization and see where is the inside target in X-ray without getting any X-ray by the crew. This X-ray is fixed, and now they define the entry point. They can actually, sorry, I thought these are automatic. So they can actually, something that they like very much, on the optic side, they can define the incision placement and discuss it, and then optimize the cut, and then minimizing them of the wound. They can also go to more complex. They can also go to more complex scenarios in which, in this case, they are doing an interlocking, drilling, and they are controlling the drilling access. That's why you see, in this case, some visual markers, not for the system, but for allowing that they are to show them whether they move the patient, and therefore the X-ray is not at the right position or not, and this side effect is showing them. Now, something for this community is very interesting, is that we don't have experience in gaming or in designing such a thing. So about 2 weeks ago, we had 3-4 of the best surgeons in Germany. They came a Saturday, and they went through some pig experiments with us. And something that we noticed is that this, for example, this user interface is not optimal. Because what happens is that we are giving them the feedback here while they are really focusing on this area. And most of them, I would say, they did not look at this side. They were just focusing where they were doing their action, which I think in game you're probably very much used to it. And we found out that, again, if they were trained, if we had a training system that would show them how to do the process, they would do it much, much better, because all of them, they had never used augmented reality. So as soon as they were confused, they were just looking at the X-ray and continuing as they were doing all the time before. So this training becomes more important. One of the challenges is that if you superimpose on the patient, then your brain says that this is floating on top of the patient. Therefore, we had to find a lot of solutions, how to mix real and virtual, such that you really feel that you're seeing through. This is a PhD of 1 PhD students and master of about 5, computing the way we should present this complex data, and also to use different effects of shadowing and etc. This is Susanne. You could see the picture at the very beginning. And here, again, what we are seeing is the augmented reality through her body. And this is, again, a pre-operative data. She's not getting any X-ray. We continued, and maybe I go directly to the end of this video. This is the human Korean data. And what you will see at the end is that what we started with Jörg Traub with his feet, now instead of showing this, if we show it with the novel technique of visualization, then the impression that virtual is really inside the real is much stronger than what I showed you at the very beginning. So this is this new visualization. Now, one of the issue, again, in augmented reality is that if I show 3D on top of 2D, you can't take advantage of 3D because you cannot move it around. Again, here we used an idea which can also be nicely used in game technology, where we take a virtual mirror and integrate it into an AR environment, mixed reality environment. So without moving the 3D, we can get any view of that 3D while the supreme position is still totally correct. You can also leave these mirrors inside, and then you can see, by moving around, you can see multiple views of the site. So I come to the conclusion of my talk, more or less, that basically we have a lot of challenges, but we need to bring this into the training and teaching through games, hopefully. This is also the developments of the work of Tobias Blum. Here, from CT data, we are simulating ultrasound, and we are creating a simulating ultrasound simulation. And the techniques that I showed you that 5 years ago we used for a birth simulator, now we are using to show the trainee how the real doctor, the expert doctor, did the ultrasound. And again, here, by synchronizing these two, the trainee can automatically verify whether his ultrasound examination was the same as, or following the same teaching that he had from the doctors. Now, all this technology needed a 30,000 euro head-mounted display. We are still waiting for the game industry to come with, 100 euro head-mounted displays. But fortunately, at least for the tracking side, the technology of Kinect allowed us to go very cheap. And I think Melis showed you yesterday the work of Tobias Blum that took now all the things that he had done in this head-mounted displays and brought it to Kinect with a miracle. But I don't go through this one. I don't need to, because I think you had a presentation of that nicely, thanks to Melis yesterday. So now such available technologies such as Kinect make these things available for the big public, and I think creates a link between your community and the community of big medical producers of surgical solutions or medical imaging device solutions. I think a lot of things that we do makes much more sense if it's trained through serious games. And I would love to hear your feedback and see whether there would be opportunities to collaborate and bring this technology faster to a correct teaching and training. I will stop here, maybe, and thank again my students, and thank you for your attention. You have the websites where you have tons of videos and publications there, and please contact us if you have ideas of collaboration. Thank you.